see you. I have nothing to complain about. I'm counting all of my blessings in quarantine. I have a roof over my head. I have my dogs that I've missed very much. And now the book is out in the world. And so I'm excited for this conversation. It's nice to see people. How are you doing? And first of all, let's just get this out of the way.
What?
I'm so sick of your background. I'm so sick of seeing it on Room Raider. It's perfect, and welcome to my kitchen.
I mean, look, your kitchen is about the size of our bedroom, so I'm not taking any guff from you, Mr. Room Raider 10 for 10 yourself. So
I felt like that was generous.
Chasten, the last time you and I saw each other was in Columbia, South Carolina. It was February 29th. I was interviewing you for my podcast, Cape Up, and little did I know, a little more than 24 hours later, Pete would drop out of the presidential race. And I keep going back to that interview I did with you then as I was reading through the book, because two things came to mind. That first one was, who knew at that time that your race would end? But then the second thing, as I was reading your book, that came through, was like, wait a minute, this sounds really familiar. You were road testing some of your thoughts for the book during that interview, were you not?
I think many of the things I said on the campaign trail are in the book, and mostly because the book, I think, it has a very conversational tone to it. And the book, in many ways, in the third section of the book, when we really get into politics and the presidential campaign, you probably just heard a lot of the things that I was saying over and over again, like a broken record. But that's all me. I wanted the book to feel conversational. I wanted people to feel like we were just sitting down having a cup of coffee and I was just telling them stories. I wanted to draw people in and help them know what I was feeling in the moment. And I found that really helped me be successful on the campaign trail. I didn't know, I felt really intimidated about who I should be on the campaign trail, and I found success in just being myself. And when I am myself, I'm, I think, very open, sometimes very loud. And I tried my best to always tell the truth. And I think when you and I were talking, that's just, I always want people to just know they're talking to me. I don't want to put up this facade of, political Chasten.
During that interview, both of your parents were there, Terry and Sherry Glesman. And as you write in your book, your father is always out there willing to help anybody. Will drop everything to help someone else, including me, when a landscaping team at the hotel where we were doing the interview had the leaf blower going, and he went out and got them to stop. But I'm bringing them up because the first half of your book is about them and your upbringing in Michigan.
Yeah.
Talk about your parents. Who are Terry and Sherry Glesman?
I loved writing about them. I hope they're watching tonight. I think they are watching. Their story is a story in of itself. High school sweethearts. Dad emancipated himself in high school, was walking across town. He would go to school, then he'd go to the diner, flip burgers, walk home at night. Mom was using her tips from waitressing to buy him clothes. He didn't have a winter coat. I mean, their story is beautiful. And they fought so hard to give us everything that they thought we deserved, even when it was really hard. With a small family business, Mom was working part-time at the hospital, and they're so loving. And the thing that I am most appreciative about is how when my story took a turn and when I ran away from home, convinced I would be an embarrassment, they called me home. And I think they are an example of hope, that families can work things out, that they can have the hard conversations, because my parents didn't have any of the answers. They were terrified for me. They just wanted what was best for me. And that's all that they could tell me at the time. And I think I count myself as one of the lucky ones to have parents like them, who continuously show up, want to get it right. And beyond that, my dad's a prankster. You read about it in the book, always playing tricks on me, always trying to teach me lessons the hard way. My mom is very loud, very loving. She will do anything for anyone, just like my father. You know, my mom's been battling cancer for 12 years, but she still, you know, bakes the zucchini bread and drops it off on people's doorsteps when they're going through a rough time. I mean, she's just always doing things for other people. And I would like to think that's maybe where I got some of my grit and determination from.
Well, you mentioned that your dad was is a prankster, and I'm going to want you to talk to us about one of his pranks. But I have to get there by talking about the fact that growing up, you were kind of butch. You had what was it? Be. Well, go. I mean, you had fish camp.
Yeah.
So talk about fish camp, because that gets to one of the pranks I think your father pulled on you.
Yeah, I mean, and one, I guess, you know, some of the signs were there.
Signs of what?
Oh, that I was totally gay. Like, you know, my brothers always wanted, I don't know, sports stuff for birthdays, and I wanted like the new Britney Spears album, and they were out like chopping wood and doing things with dad, and I was performing Celine Dion songs while my mom was folding the laundry. Like, the signs were there. But and
for the folks
also, so
for the folks at Sixth and I who have seen me do this before, if you have your book, I have something to tell you, a memoir, on page 6, he writes, "At home, my older brothers were dad's boys, while one of my favorite pastimes was singing Celine Dion songs to my mom while she folded laundry." So it is there in print. I interrupted you, Chasten. Keep going.
No, I mean, that's me. And it's silly, you know, hindsight, like, come on, all the signs were there, but I was also so hyper-focused on blending in. You know, going to fish camp, always sticking my neck out, wanting to be, you know, the best marksman possible when we were shooting guns, and wanting to catch the biggest fish, and always trying to my best to impress my parents. You know, we were in 4-H, and I thought the best way I can impress people, and not be, I don't want people to examine my sexuality, right? I don't want anyone to think about who I am. So if I'm the best at everything that I do, then that will impress them, and that'll be the only thing that we have to talk about. So I'll win the blue ribbons. I'll make the honor roll.
Which dog is that?
It's really funny because they usually just sleep all day, and Truman's like sniffing every corner, and Buddy's playing with a toy. So it's always got to be about Buddy. You know, that I was so focused on blending in, I didn't want anyone to think about who I was. And so I thought if I won at everything that they were doing, then I'd be safe.
One of the things you write about is that, speaking of you being butch, you loved fishing. And
I still love fishing.
And one of your brothers didn't like to bait the hooks.
Yeah.
So you'd get in there, you'd touch the worms or whatever and hook them and do all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. And, you know, I still love fishing. And I think it's funny that, oh my gosh, I think it's funny that you point that out. Yeah, you know, to do it well, you don't want any extra worm hanging off the hook. So you have to rip them in half sometimes.
Okay.
You've learned something tonight. We can all go home now. We can all...
Well, I mean, on that point, you're right. Fishing was where I excelled. I was great at tying hooks. One of my brothers hated touching worms and putting them on the hook, but I never minded getting my hands dirty, a quality that has helped me excel equally at raising cows and eventually working as a barista at Starbucks. In terms of raising cows, the other butch thing you did was you raised steers. I mean, you have a trophy from 4-H. Can you? What was going on there?
So my parents,
I'm a city kid, so this was all fascinating to me.
So your beef comes from steers. We were in 4-H from a young age, and I think I started with goats and then worked my way up to dairy feeders. And it's a great program. You know, Peter and I just went in on like a quarter of a steer with my family, so you can stock your freezer with you know, good homegrown meat. You know, we had to keep records of everything that we spent on the animal. We had to walk the animal every weekend, take it to fair, show it, talk about the different cuts of meat to know how to show an animal. And it definitely taught us a lot of hard work. I mean, my dad made us muck out the barn every Sunday, and there are a lot of life lessons to be learned in 4-H. But again, I just thought, if I was the best at 4-H, if I won the trophies and the blue ribbons, that then people would be impressed with me, and then I would, be safe from scrutiny or examination.
And so then safe from scrutiny and examination, but that's not how it actually worked. You
Right.
did get teased and bullied.
Yeah, and I felt like at the time, the homophobic slurs were just something that was tossed around, between the boys in the locker room and in the hallways. But I was scared that they actually knew something about me that I wasn't ready to name myself. It was such a toxic environment, and I think every boy was trying to figure out who they were and where they fit. But yeah, the bullying was pretty tough.
You in high school, did you have any, you didn't have any kind of crushes or boyfriends?
Oh my God, of course I did.
Well, okay,
not
crushes,
boyfriend.
sure, but boyfriends,
Yeah.
that didn't happen in high school.
No, it was unsafe. I mean, you could not be out. And I have friends who came out after high school, and we didn't even talk about it together in high school, not even in the safety of, playing video games in the basement while their mom's upstairs making dinner. I mean, we never talked about our feelings. We never talked about our sexuality, never felt safe to open up about it. It was just a fact that you could not be gay.
You write in the book, just for a little deviation, about your high school, your time in high school and what the people were like in high school. One of the things you said, one of the things you wrote in the book was that you went to a George W. Bush rally because in Michigan, that was a star coming to town. And one of the things you did was that you put on the Mitsushitsu, which is the name you gave your car, your mom car, is that you put a W sticker on it.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? As I hunt for that line.
Because I just felt like if I went along with all of the things that seemed to be the status quo, the things that most of the jocks were comfortable with or talked about, then putting a W sticker on my car just was another symbol of, safety. It's just like, I'm just like you, just leave me alone. Sure, I'll go along with whatever you want. And that just seemed like another way that I could, get admission to whatever group I thought I needed to belong to.
Mm-hmm. One thing you also write about as you're writing about your high school time is sort of in retrospect, noticing the number of Confederate flags and other symbols like that. You write, I wish I could say that from an early age, I fervently objected to the presence of these symbols, but truth be told, I had no idea what they meant. And this was actually a beautiful line. I was swimming in a sea of whiteness and I didn't even know I was wet. Talk more about that.
Yeah, I just grew up in the whiteness bubble. Nobody asked us to examine our whiteness in high school because that's how the system is structured. I mean, it was 99.9% white here. Went away to school in northern Wisconsin, which was also very heavily white. And I talk in the book about how I really didn't have a larger understanding of race in America until I moved to Milwaukee and started working in Milwaukee public schools. That the only thing I was worried about in high school, the only thing I was thinking about was myself, and fearful of what other people were going to do to me if they figured out who I was. I was never asked to examine the world on a larger picture. And I talk about in the book how when people would talk about the Confederate flag, it was never, rebutting a racist symbol. It was saying, why would you fly that? Michigan's in the Union. There was never a conversation, even school-wide, about how when you fly symbols like that from your pickup truck or you wear them on your belt buckle or on your t-shirt, you are partaking in a racist structure that's a racist symbol. But we never had those conversations. And that is the way I feel like many communities across the country, at least the one I grew up in, are structured, that people aren't even asked to examine it.
Yeah, you even write, I was growing up in a system designed to keep me from questioning them, those symbols in the first place. Let's talk about Germany. And I need you to describe, I need you to pronounce Freikorper, free body culture.
Culture. Yeah.
Yes. So well, first you have to talk about the German student exchange program that
Okay.
you heard about it. Excuse me. You applied to it without even telling your parents. You told them you wanted to, but then you snuck and you applied for it.
Yeah.
What was this program and why was it so important to you to be a part of it?
It's called the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange Program. So it's a fully funded scholarship between the American and German governments. Started in the late 80s to foster understanding and cross-cultural connections between the American and German governments and students. When my teacher said, fully funded, all the bells went off because my parents would never have been able to afford to send me on an exchange year. But I knew they would also probably never condone me leaving the nest that soon. And so I just scribbled on the signature line where your parent was supposed to sign. Probably my first big act of rebellion. I know. And then when I got the call, I sort of brushed it off as, they just want to talk. It's just a thing. And then I got it, and my parents let me go, and it changed my life. Even though it was a tough year, I had a lot of different host families. That was a weird process, but it gave me the space that I needed to, come into myself, to understand who I was away from my family, away from my hometown. I literally felt like I needed to run to the opposite end of the world to figure out who I was.
Now, you mentioned how you had a lot of host families while you were in Germany, but that first family, the introduction to them, talk about that first introduction to them.
Should we talk about it? I mean,
they pick you up, and then all of a sudden, everybody's naked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had a language course family for a little over a month. And then they send you off to your year-long family, and they picked me up from the train station and took me home. And then, they had a little cabin, and they said, we're going to take you over to the cabin. We're going to celebrate your arrival. And, before we sit down and have cake, let's all just go swimming. And then they all went swimming without any clothes on. And I realized, wow, I am a literal fish out of water right now.
And you trust me, you'll love that part of the story. I don't want to give it away. But Germany, you said Germany changed your life.
Yeah.
And it was there that you actually kissed a boy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I write in the book, it's probably not that I, had the confidence to kiss a boy. It's that I had enough alcohol to find the confidence to kiss a boy. And then it was over with. And I did it, and I realized I wanted to do it again. And it opened up a whole new world for me, because I came from a place that just told me, whatever is happening inside you is wrong. It is broken. You are disgusting. And I felt disgusting. And then, I kissed a boy, and I realized I didn't care that that's what people thought was disgusting, because it made me feel so alive. And then I, found friends there that I was able to talk about my feelings with, and it gave me the confidence to go home and be myself.
One of those friends, I think she was a friend, not a host parent, but Franzi. Who's Franzi?
Franzi. So Franzi was one of my closest friends in Germany. She was sort of one of our ambassadors when we got there. She was a local student who showed us around town for our language course. And then when I went through, oh my gosh, the gamut with host families, she was my biggest supporter, and she found another family that was willing to take me in for the remainder of the year. And I went to school with her, and was finally able to just have a friend I could open up to. She was also a great tutor because she would never let me speak English. So my German improved.
How much longer after you returned from Germany and back home to Michigan did you come out to your parents?
Couple months. I couldn't do it. I could not. I just felt like I was so afraid that I was falling back into my old ways, falling back into a community that I didn't want to belong to. I wanted to be myself, and I felt like going home I had to pretend again. And so I think it's right about the time college classes were starting, maybe in August or so, and I wrote the letter, and it was eating me alive, and I had to get out.
And so then, which did you do first? Did you confide in friends first, or did you tell your parents first?
I told some friends first and worked up the courage to tell my family, and some friends knew and told me that, they would be there for me if things didn't go well.
And you write about this, and you've talked about this both in a Washington Post interview, profile, and in other places, that you didn't verbally tell your family, your parents. You wrote a letter that you handed to your mother. Do you even remember what you wrote in the letter?
No. I remember handing it to her, crying, grabbing some bags. There was some back and forth. I don't remember. And my mother saved the letter, and I don't know if I'm ready to look at it yet.
Oh, what? As I remember asking you this in February, and you said you didn't remember. You had there in the book that you didn't remember. When do you think you might be ready to look at that letter that you wrote?
Well, I actually didn't know my mom saved the letter until a couple months ago. And, she just told me, well, because she's heard me have to tell this story a lot. And she said, I saved that letter. But I don't want to read it yet.
One of the things you did after you handed her the letter, she read the letter, as you said, there was some back and forth. You left. Why did you leave? It's not like your parents said, get out. They never told you to leave, but you left anyway. Why?
Because I was convinced. I was just convinced. I had heard so many people say things about gay people. Just the darkness that was hiding in my head just told me that you will ruin everything. You will embarrass your family. You will embarrass your friends. People will not want to be associated with you. This was shortly after the time of Matthew Shepard, and I was scared that some of the circles that my family operated in would be unsafe for me. And there was just so many things telling me, get out, just go away. And not just for my safety, but for the dignity of my own family. Don't
you thought you embarrassed them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So you leave home, as you said earlier, you made arrangements. So if things went awry, you would have some place to go. You did go to a friend's home. How long did you stay with that friend?
A couple months. And she was in graduate school, and I felt like I was in the way. So sometimes I'd stay at other friends' houses. Sometimes it'd get really dark in my head, and I would just think, I'm an embarrassment to my family, I'm a burden on my friends, and I would just, find a place to park the car and try to get away from everybody. But it was a couple months until Mom called me and asked me to come home.
how long did you lived in your car, or you stayed in your car? How was it, a continuous stretch, or it was every so often you would leave a friend's and sleep in your car, stay in your car?
Yeah, it was just every so often when it just seemed like I was such an imposition to other people. But I would just try to find a place far away or, tucked away and disappear for a little bit.
And then your mom calls and says, come home.
Yeah.
And when you went home, how were things? I mean, were things pretty raw, or were you able to? Yeah.
I was exhausted. I was working full time at the hospital. I was going to class full time. And I was so tired and so empty. And to have your parents call you and say, come home, we love you, we're going to figure this out. And the scary part was they didn't have any answers. They had no idea what it meant. They just knew it was going to be hard. They were scared for me, but I just wanted to sleep in my own bed. I wanted, someone that I love to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. And it meant the world when she called. I drove right home. Yeah.
One of another favorite line of mine, because it's a little dark, but it's funny, and I think people, when they read it, you might be hearing some amens and preach from afar. But on page 79, Chasten writes, I had no idea my life was going to be loveless and hard because, in italics, men are terrible. and then you proceed to talk about the men. So I want to walk us through
the men.
Okay.
I did an interview recently, and I mean no malice to this person. I forget who it was with, but they were like, do you really believe that all men are terrible? I was like, no, I don't. No, that is not what that's about. It was like,
was that person even gay? Come on.
Probably. I was like, the whole point of the telling those stories is like, you're having a drink with your friends. You're like, ugh, men, It's like, no, I am not anti-man. Obviously.
Okay, so I'm laughing, but I have to stop laughing because the first person you talk about is very serious, and that is Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, as you write, seemed to know everyone. Older and taller, Mark was like the subject of a Shania Twain song.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know who Shania Twain is, but for those who are watching, is there a particular Shania Twain song he was like?
Yeah, that don't impress me much, because then I say the problem is it really did impress me very much. If you don't know who Shania Twain is, that part's not for you. That's okay. Keep reading. Move on.
But then things. So, Mark, if I remember right, you were at a party.
Yeah.
And you and Mark go off to a room, and then, as you write, the first sexual experience was a very negative one. What happened?
I didn't know what it was supposed to be like. And the way things progressed, I slowly realized that's probably not what it's supposed to feel like. And then realized I didn't want to be there anymore. And so I asked him to stop, and he didn't. Then I had to keep asking, and then finally take matters into my own hands and get out.
one of the things you said earlier in the conversation, Chasten, is that your parents are always there for you.
Yeah.
And so you called your mom.
My parents told us, I had heard them tell this to my brothers when I was younger, but they always told us, if you are ever in danger or if you're ever too drunk and you can't drive. I was not a partier in high school, but I know why my parents always reminded us of this. Said, if you ever need help, you can call, no questions asked, and we don't have to talk about it when you get home. Because my parents didn't want us to make bad choices. And if we did make a bad choice, they didn't want us driving. And I called mom, and I didn't know what to do. I was, I thought I was probably still too drunk to drive, and called my mom, and she didn't ask me any questions. We went home and I went to bed.
Yeah, you're right. She picked you up in her pickup truck, and you barely spoke. The next person, Adam.
Oh God, can we get a drink? Should we take an intermission? I'm just joking.
Just tell everyone that's vodka in that bottle.
Oh, I could never.
So Adam, you're right. The main reason Adam and I got together was that we were both gay.
Yeah.
So that was just, we're both gay. We both like watching TV and playing games, and that was that. That didn't last very long.
No, we were like, oh, you're gay, I'm gay. I've never had a boyfriend before. We should be boyfriends. And then realized we probably shouldn't be boyfriends. We both didn't know what love was.
Brad? Was Brad in Chicago?
You can tell I use pseudonyms because it's like...
Yeah, I mean, come on.
What a Brad. Which one's this?
Was he in Chicago? Brad, the professional with things going on in his life and a lively group of friends.
Yeah.
He was had it professionally going on, nice apartment. That was at the time when things were not going so well for you. And you're right, he was verbally aggressive to the point where he physically removed you from his apartment, you and your things.
Yeah.
From his apartment. And then who did you call?
My dad. I was standing outside. I was at the bus stop. It was raining, of course. And I called my dad, and you know, he asked me if I was okay and asked me if I knew how to get home. And I just knew that that was too far, that's not how, that didn't feel healthy. And I want to say I don't know why I called him, but I know why I called him, because there's some things that you confide in your friends, and there's some things you feel so scared of, and I knew my dad was a safe space. And when it comes to somebody, you know, abusing you like that, it was sort of this talk with dad, like, that's wrong, right? Like, men don't do that. You don't do that to somebody you love, right? And you know, he reminded me that I'm worth a lot more than that, and that's not that person's not deserving of loving his son.
And then there was Ethan. And I love the way you set up the introduction of Ethan, because at the end of the previous chapter, you write about how you picked up and moved with your boyfriend to Chicago. And I wrote on the page, hold up, wait a minute, what boyfriend? Flip the page and you write, wait a minute, what? I know what you're thinking, what boyfriend? So here's what you write about Ethan on page 90. Ethan was another theater type who amazingly wanted to talk about books and feelings. He was adorable, charming, and easy to talk to. We hit it off right away. We were both teaching theater and he worked at Caribou Coffee. It was almost too perfect. That was when you were working at Starbucks. Life with Ethan was fun, secure, and for once stable. When I didn't get the full-time teaching position at First Stage, we moved to Chicago together in search of better opportunities. That relationship lasted 2 years?
Couple of years, yeah.
Couple of years. And then it ended via text message?
Yep.
And he said what?
Yeah. I think we were getting ready to go visit his family. I think it was a holiday. And he said, don't bother. I'm out. I think I was temping at the time in between jobs, and got up from my desk and ran out into the hallway and was like, what, called him, what are you talking about? He said, it's, I'm out. I can't do it. And that was that. And I got to say, I use pseudonyms in the book. I'm trying my best to protect everyone's identity. I'm not out to burn anybody. But that hurt. That there's so many things, right? And that I lay out in the book about what it took to get to the next spot, what it took to find love the next time around. And when people take advantage of you, they hurt you, they abuse you, and then they up and leave you, you really start to question your worth, but we all know where that story is going.
Well, and I was going to say, there is a method to my madness here in making you walk through all of these
Tomorrow's
things.
headline, Jonathan Capehart eviscerates Chasten at 6th and I.
So, but before we get to who came next, what I started making notes here because, I mean, you are probably one of the most industrious people I've ever met or read about. Here are just some of the jobs that you have had in your young life, starting way at the beginning. Kennel technician, busboy at Mexican restaurant, collected bottles and cans to raise money for a school gym mural, commercial actor, home health aide, nursing assistant. You worked at Toys R Us.
Sorry.
You were a bartender at Scooters.
True.
And Felicia, who kept you in line.
Yes, she did.
You asked her how to make a Cosmopolitan, and she said what?
I remember she whipped her wig around and she was like, I'm only going to tell you this once. She intimidated the hell out of me. And that's how I learned how to make drinks very quickly, because I never wanted to disappoint her.
You were a salesperson at Eddie Bauer.
You're welcome.
Then then there was your job at First Stage. There was your job at Starbucks. I just want to pause here for a second because that was fun. I mean, some of the stories you tell. Where's the woman? You said there's a difference between the mocha people and the foam people.
The foam people, the frappuccino people.
And the foam people, you said, are the worst.
The worst. Stop being awful. For everyone watching this, stop it. Baristas are so underpaid. You guys know you never tip. And, there's 50 people in line trying to get a drink in the morning, and you're making like $9 an hour. You're tired, and someone's like, my cappuccino is too wet. Or you make a latte and there's too much foam. And so you do this sensible thing of taking off the lid and getting the spoon and scooping off the foam. And then they yell at you because they want you to make a whole new drink. Stop being rude to your baristas. I still, like, anytime I go to Starbucks, it's like, please, baby Jesus, just don't have any of those people. Because I always feel like I need to say something. And I was so afraid on the campaign trail that someone was going to catch me telling somebody off at a Starbucks, because if there's one thing I can't stand, it's when people are rude to customer service employees or anybody who's serving you food or beverages.
And you write in the book, something about Starbucks makes customers feel especially entitled to inhumanity.
Yeah. Like, have you ever seen someone, you have, where they like take the lid off the cup and they're like, there's not enough caramel in it. And then the barista like puts more caramel in it and they're like, it's not enough. Or like someone just has a full blown meltdown about like a sauce. And like, I get it. Like, I love treating myself to sugary beverages. Like, it's a great little treat and you want it to be right. Yeah, it's expensive, but like, where's the humanity?
Back to your list of jobs.
Okay,
You
I'll
had
get
an
off my
office
soapbox.
job. What?
I'll get off my Starbucks soapbox.
You had an office job, but I couldn't find exactly like what it was. You did Airbnb. You Airbnb'd out your apartment in Chicago. You bartended at a comedy club and did stand up.
Yeah, it failed.
Substitute teacher in the Chicago public schools.
Hmm.
Another thing you did that caught me by surprise, you applied to be an American Airlines flight attendant.
I sure did. I gotta say, this feels like a deposition. I did. I was bartending at the comedy club, and my full-time gig was substitute teaching. So that I did that every day. And I was also letting out the apartment on Airbnb after my boyfriend left and wasn't paying his share of rent. And then I thought, you know what? I need like a Julia Roberts Eat, Pray, Love year. You know, I need to like get out of here. I need to like go see the world. And I thought, you know, I would become a flight attendant. And then when they gave me the call, they're like, we're ready, come do training. I was like, I can't, I gotta be a teacher. Because I was just so in love with the classroom, I didn't want to leave.
And then one of the last jobs I noted down before I stopped, because by then you were into other things, chaperone for the German exchange program that you were in. Which also leads to an obvious endpoint. But I'm still not going to get there yet, because I need you to talk about the fact that during all of this, when all of between the jobs and college, community college, then University of Wisconsin, then back to community college, then back to University of Wisconsin, but Eau Claire, then there was turmoil happening in your life, both personally, educationally, professionally, and that it's woven throughout your book, the pain and the uncertainty and the fear that you went through during all of those years. How was it to write it's one thing to live it, it's another thing to relive it on a page for other people to read?
Yeah. I'm no stranger to the question, what does this all add up to? What's the point? I didn't have a lot of people in my life to help me figure out what I was doing. My parents didn't go to college. I was a first generation college student. I had no idea how to afford it. I often just had no idea what I was doing. And I was just, trying to survive every day, going to work, going to class. And then out on the campaign trail, I met people who that's their lived reality every day. That's just their life. And I felt like all of those stumbles, all of those failures, those failed relationships, the jobs, everything made me weaker. I thought they defined me. And what they defined was a failure. And I realized out on the campaign trail, I got to talk about this stuff, because I'm sitting at round tables where people are literally telling me my life story back to me and they don't even know it. And the more we open up and share our truths, our vulnerabilities, the more we help people feel understood and seen. And so you're able to connect with people and say, I know, I've been there. I've done that before. I know how hopeless that feels. And my goal for the book was to help other people get in those feels as well, to know what I was feeling. And sometimes that was really hard, to be that vulnerable, not just because it's scary to be vulnerable, but because people don't write books like this in politics. They don't let their guard down. They pretend often that everything's been great. Or when they do share their vulnerabilities, it is so methodical and calculated that you sometimes don't feel like you're really talking to a real person. And that's not who I am. And so I wanted the reader to feel that on the page.
You, in the book, you write about your about medical debt, about your student debt. There's an interesting vignette where you talk about how once, well, you were getting ahead of myself a bit, but you were hiding your notices, your payment notices from Pete.
Yeah.
And he found one. You were one of those people who ran to the mailbox to try to intercept him, but you slipped up, but that led to a conversation. But I leapt ahead of myself, but I wanted to sneak that in because there was something that you said in the interview in February that comes through in the book that I want to read to get you to talk about the young man you met on Hinge while waiting for the kids to arrive at the airport in Germany. You wrote, this was when you, after meeting Pete, and you write about this about on your first date where you laid it all out there. You want a family, you want to get married, you want to have kids, the whole thing.
Yeah.
You said to me in February, I had never felt like somebody cared so deeply about who Chasten really was. And as I mentioned, and I've opened up a little bit about, my experience with having people break my heart and unfortunately take advantage of loving me. And for someone like Pete to come along and not only chip away at that wall that I'd built up between my heart and the rest of the world, I mean, he took a wrecking ball to it. Not only did he make me believe in love again, but he really helped me see my importance and my worth. And that was when, in response to my question about people saying he was robotic. But I wish people could have seen your face as you said those words. You talked about in that interview your journey to Pete. How, just in the little bit of time we have left before we go to Q&A, just how big of a moment was that to meet Pete and that first date and to be in front of a person who really cared, genuinely cared?
Yeah, I took a lot of umbrage to those criticisms because I think a lot of people think so much in politics needs to be performed for other people. And love is great, when there's the fireworks and the hand holding and the kissing and the dates, but partnership, true partnership, when somebody can hold your hand and look you in the eye and tell you that you are worthy of space, when your whole life you have contemplated whether you're worthy of it at all, and make you feel truly seen and loved, that the things that other people did to you don't define you. The hardship you've had along the way doesn't define you. That to me is the greatest part of love and loving Pete, is that I feel truly whole being loved by him. And it's not about the way he performs his love, it's the way he shows up every single day in this marriage. I think it's the greatest gift I've ever been given, is the opportunity to be loved by him.
One thing you wanted to do, he's talked about it on the campaign trail. You broke some news in your book. I'm not going to tell anybody where it is. I'm not going to say what page it is. But it's known that you and Pete want to start a family.
Oh yeah.
But what I didn't know, you wrote, part of Peter's decision to run meant having to put the family on hold to stop pursuing adoptions, which we'd been doing before he decided to run, because it would have been impossible to get to know our new child in that environment. So you were already trying to start this family.
Yeah.
Did you get far along?
Almost. There was an opportunity fell into our lap. And for a few days we thought we were going to be dads. And then that opportunity went away. And we felt, we were crushed. And then maybe thought it just wasn't meant to be at that time, and decided to put that dream on hold and see where life would take us. That was something that we both decided to do together. But that was definitely a conversation we were having even before we were having conversations about running for president. And there are conversations I'm very glad to be revisiting now that we're home.
Oh, you just anticipated my next question. So have you picked things back up? So you have.
Yes.
You have.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who's watching in the LGBTQ community, or you don't even have to be gay. I mean, it's hard. It's hard if you can't have a child naturally. And that's not just limited to gay people. We have a lot of friends who've had families in very different ways. We're asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of listening. And that's really exciting. It's really, really exciting, but also terrifying at the same time.
I bet.
It's expensive too. I mean, even adoption it's so expensive, and exploring all these options, it's so prohibitive to start a family. And it's also heartbreaking, that there's so many good people out there who are ready to be parents. And we don't have to get too political, but it's also a really important reason why we elect Joe Biden this fall. I mean, the stories that you hear about LGBTQ couples trying to adopt and being denied citizenship, or, agencies that are openly homophobic. I've called one myself. It's hard.
Before I open it up to Q&A, I have some lined up here. I neglected to get you to talk about the prank that your father pulled on you at fish camp, and that was the one where you were out fishing.
Yes.
What was it? Fly fishing?
Just fishing.
Just
Regular
fishing.
pole fishing. Yep.
And he said, "Oh, I have to go somewhere and do something," and he left you there for hours.
Yeah. Just to see what I would do.
As he watched you from afar.
As he watched me from the opposite side of the river. Yeah. And I was so furious at him that he would do that. But I mean, that's how Dad taught me lessons. He taught me grit, determination, survival skills, showed me how to build a fire. And that's exactly what I did. And he didn't come back, and I dug a little hole and got out my waterproof matches and started a fire, and I just sat there. And eventually he came back. We are going to go to Q&A. I think I think we're exactly on time. So look at you.
We should be able to get some of these here. We're going to start with Meredith. Meredith writes, I am a high school student. I'm a high school student with a big passion for politics. I absolutely love you, parenthesis, and Pete, Buddy, and Truman. And I was wondering if you had any advice for finding your own voice in a political landscape.
I think that's the biggest question of politics. Why are you here? What are you here for? What do you believe in? And you have to claim that. If you are going to pretend to be somebody else, then you don't belong in the arena. And it's okay if the arena you're operating in right now doesn't necessarily reflect the one that you wish you were in. It certainly wasn't the case when I was in high school. But you have to own your own story, your values, know what you stand for, what you want, and then go out there and get your hands dirty. I was never political as a high school student. I never felt comfortable even talking about politics. And then on the campaign trail, I met like the most organized, well-spoken high school students who are out there canvassing and running our field offices. There are people who need you to get involved. It's not just about the presidency. It's not just about the big ticket races. Oftentimes what people need in their communities, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community, it's not just a president who understands, the worth of the LGBTQ community. It's also making sure people have, empathetic school board members. So find a race in your community that you can work on, somebody that you can help, and get to work.
And you actually write in the book that you didn't like politicians at all when you were growing up. This is a question from Jim. And Jim writes, I met so many young LGBTQ people at events with you and Pete. You meant so much to so many of them. Was there a time that the weight of that occurred to you? How did you remain centered about that?
Thank you, Jim. I feel like in politics, you're just not supposed to talk about the hard stuff. And you're always supposed to present this like very strong character of yourself. And you're never supposed to talk about the things that are hard or hurtful. And you're never really supposed to show your true colors. I can't do that. It was hard. And the weight of a historical race, the exhaustive calendar, I could not have done it if I didn't have people who believed in me. My husband, my friends who came out on the campaign trail with me, my body woman, Emily, who was with me, who, you're surrounded by people who dance and sing with you in the car to get all the goofies out and to just remember who you are and stay centered. And, people who remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes that was really hard. It was really hard to carry the weight of everyone's expectations and criticisms and opinions about who you should be and what you should do and what you should say and what you should wear. And at the end of the day, I just surrounded myself with people who validated me for me. And I told everybody, I'm not going to do this pretending to be somebody else. And I think that's what helps me be successful in the end. But yeah, it can be really hard. And you wonder sometimes the way people make it hard for politicians, their spouses, their families, why people do it in the first place. I know why we do it, because it's worth it. But sometimes at the end of the day, you wanted to look at people who are, showing up to criticize you or spit at you while you're trying to get in your car or cuss you out or pound on the windows and try to take you down a dark place. You remember exactly why you were there. And that's, I'll be honest, yeah, that could be crushing. But then when you go and sit at those round tables with kids who are in the same spot you were when you were 17, and you see the look of hope in their eyes, you remember why you're there, and you know that you need to be there. And if you aren't there, then the country keeps pushing other people into the arms of people like Donald Trump, and that has to end.
Your answer to that question dovetails nicely into a question from Tara. No, I'm sorry, not Tara. Sorry, Tara. Christopher. Christopher asks, what was the best advice you received about handling the trials and tribulations of being on the campaign trail?
The first couple months on the trail, I felt like I was an imposter, that I did not belong in that conversation. I didn't belong in the political arena. There's no way I could follow in the footsteps of someone like Michelle Obama. I remember having a conversation with someone pretty well known. I won't name them to protect them though. And I was just talking about how I was worried about getting this moment right. And they looked at me and said, you know what I think your problem is that you don't think you're worthy of good things. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I knew they were right. That I kept telling myself, you don't belong here. You can't be here. There's no way you're going to get this right. You are going to fail. And I had to start telling myself, you're crushing it. and you're going to do a great job, and people need you, and you need to show up for other people, and you are worthy of the space that you are taking up.
Here's a question from Tommy. Tommy asks, what is your advice for theater teachers? My husband and I live in Alaska, and he is in his first year of teaching high school theater.
Oh my gosh. Theater's about inclusion. It's about fun. It's about teamwork. And I mean, if you're not having fun in the classroom, what's the point? That's not just for theater. I think that's across the board. I love teaching theater. I felt like I felt alive. My students felt alive. But I think one of the most important things that you need to establish as a teacher, especially in an environment like theater where you're asking people to take big risks, is just an environment of trust. And so don't be afraid to spend a lot of time just getting to know one another and building that trust, because the work will be much better for it.
Here is a question from Mark. Mark asks, during the campaign, Pete spoke several times about the faith life that the two of you share. What role does that continue to play in your marriage, and how does it contribute to your healing and personal peace?
Thank you for the question, Mark. Peter's much more religious than I am. And I really admire and love the way that he has introduced religion back into my life, because I was pushed away from it when I came out. Many people who called themselves religious were the ones who made me feel the worst. And so I gave up on religion. And it wasn't until I met Pete that I was comfortable enough to talk about religion again. And so I guess the role that plays is having really wonderful conversations with somebody who doesn't pepper their religion with prejudice, and who makes me comfortable enough to ask questions. And that's where I'm at in my journey. I'm just asking questions.
Now you're going to understand why I confused. I mentioned a Tara question, because Tara has two questions, and they're good. So the first one from Tara is, Chasten, what are your goals for your upcoming fellowship at Harvard? What would be your most desired accomplishment?
I am floored that I have a fellowship at Harvard. And again, feel like that is one of the places I just never imagined seeing myself in. And especially at a place where we're going to talk about everything that's at stake in 2020, a place that is well known for critical thinking and theory. And I think I just have a very different perspective on politics, a very different lived experience in politics. And I'm excited to share that with everyone. Hopefully, it allows students to think a little bit differently about their role in politics, their own personal story and narrative. And I'm also really excited to learn. I'm excited to be involved in conversations that will expand my thinking and my worldview. And I'm matched up with some pretty impressive fellows as well. So not only am I looking forward to sharing my experience, but I'm looking forward to learning from theirs as well.
What I thought was, what gave me a giggle when I heard the news about your fellowship is that in your book, you write about when you met Pete's friends and how accomplished they were and smart, and they all seem to come from, quote, Planet Genius. And so now you get to be a part of the so-called Planet Genius.
I know, I still feel like I'm a Martian on Planet Genius though. I've already had some Zooms with some students, and I'm like, holy crap, like these kids are so impressive. And I think it's the thing that I'm bringing to Harvard, the experience I'm bringing to Harvard, the conversations that we'll be having are just unlike anything that they've ever had at the IOP. I'm very excited about that, but yeah, I'm pretty intimidated by it too.
And you'll be fine. Here's the other question. The other question from Tara, and that is, she writes, I love how you packed your book with pop culture references. How do you deal with a partner who is, quote, celebrity blind without the same cultural repertoire?
I'm a teacher, so I teach naturally. I really do love that about Pete. I think I do kind of want to plug Stephen Smith worked on our campaign, and he wrote this really interesting article today about some of the hatred that Pete has found online because he's, quote, cringe. And it is a really interesting piece. because, as Stefan writes, the internet does not define his worldview and his like sense of self. Go read it, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. I love that he is like celebrity blind. He doesn't get it. I'll play a song, and he'll be like, "Is this Taylor Swift?" I'm like, "No, it is not Taylor Swift." Like he just doesn't get it, and I love that about him. You know, like he's over there studying foreign policy, and I'm like in the kitchen making pancakes, listening to folklore for like the 20th time. You know, we're different people, and I love it for that. I think there is like another book that I could write just about the hilarious interactions I've had with Pete and celebrities along the way. But he's adorable.
Such as?
Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Let me think of one. Oh no, I knew you'd put me on the spot. There's so many moments where I'm like, do you not know? Like the other day he was doing that event with Cher. I lost my mind. I saw it on his schedule and I was like, "You're doing an event with Cher today." He's like, "That's great." Like he just doesn't like show excitement. He's kind of like always here, which I love mostly about him. Like he's so unflappable. Like that is amazing. Can I please come in the green room and say hi? And he's like, "Oh yeah, she's wonderful. Like she's wonderful."
She's
like,
wonderful. It's like she's Cher.
Yeah, I'm the very dramatic one in the relationship. We all know that. Yeah, he's Peter. Oh, Peter.
Oh, Peter. That could be the name of your book. Oh, Peter.
Oh, Peter. Like Alexis from Schitt's Creek, just like, oh, Peter.
David. I have two questions because we are running out of time. I want to save the last question is from someone in the audience, but this one is from me. It's about the message of the book. You mentioned a couple of times in the book that to be a political spouse is, I think, everything and nothing.
Right.
What's the everything and what's the nothing?
To be a spouse is to be expected to be everything and nothing. You are expected to be well-spoken, well-read, know every policy, know everything that he has said and has not said, because you never want to speak for your spouse. You never want to make news. So when you are also expected to be nothing, you are not a star. There's only one star. People love to tell you that. You are expected not to sink the ship, don't cause a headline, don't make news. And so people often don't know what to do with you. Are you supposed to just hide, which some people wanted me to do as the spouse of the gay candidate? Are you supposed to, not exist at all? Or are you supposed to go out there and find your own voice and platform and help spread the message of the campaign? But as you're doing it, never slip up because journalists are eager to get a hunk of red meat. And so, every morning I would have to read his news clips. I would be reading parts of his binder, his policies. I'd be having conversations with the political team, with the comms team, so that I always knew how best to be, a successful surrogate. And I just don't think people are quite ready to or have figured out what to do with political spouses. And I went out there and I did it my way. And I think was pretty successful because I wasn't too concerned with what other people were expecting of me. But in the book, I talk a lot about those feelings, when you almost feel you want to be a separate person from your spouse, but people want to push you together, but they also want to pry you apart. And so there's just a lot of conflicting, input and opinions about who you should be and how to be.
And Chasten, the last question comes from, where did it go? Oh, it's from Mark. It's a question from Mark, and it is, if there were to be a movie made of your book, who should play you and who should play Pete?
Oh, it doesn't matter what I say. I'll get roasted for this online.
Just say it. Who? Well, you've got someone in mind.
No, I've never thought about. I have not. Oh my God. Do you have ideas?
Well, I know I'm trying to get you in focus here in my glasses so I can see if I can come up with.
I'm sitting on a stool. I feel like I've been very animated this whole conversation.
Let's see. Who could play you in the movie?
I feel like John Mulaney would make a good.
Oh.
I always thought he was going to play Peter on SNL.
Until.
as a caricature of Peter. I don't know, like in the love story, if John Mulaney would make the right Peter.
No.
He could actually make a great Chasten if he just wore round glasses, but he's way too tall. But he, like, his humor is that's, sometimes I'm afraid I talk like him way too often.
Well, I mean, what you need, I mean, there's enough of a similarity. Put him in some round glasses, but if he's got the same personality, that's what you want.
Oh, exactly. It doesn't it doesn't have to be men. Can we just do Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, and we'll just mirror the relationship in two women instead of men?
Actually, that's box office gold.
Somebody call me. I have student loans to pay off.
Chasten, we spent a lot of time. We barely touched on the campaign. We barely touched on any of the machinations, from the run for DNC chair to the campaign to the dropping out, and everything dealing with Pete. And I did that on purpose because this is your book. You had something you wanted to tell us, and hopefully the folks who are watching got to learn a lot more, and you will learn a lot more when you read his book. I have something to tell you, a memoir. Chasten Buttigieg, thank you very, very much for being here and for asking me to be a part of your book launch. This is great. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I'm sorry that we can't all be in person, but thank you for your support. And this has been such a pleasure.
And I just want to thank you so much, Chasten Buttigieg, Jonathan Capehart, for being with us tonight. I encourage you all to go out and buy a copy of I Have Something to Tell You if you haven't already. Copies bought through Sixth and I will include an autographed book plate. Oh, thank you for modeling. The link to purchase is in the chat box, and we'll also be emailing everyone with a link. We have more virtual events with authors coming up, so check out our calendar at sixthandI.org. When the time comes, we look forward to welcome you back to Sixth and I, but until then, take care and good night, everyone.
Bye, Chasten.
Take care.